Listen, let me tell you something real quick. A lot of women out here are losing value in the eyes of a man without even knowing it. Not because they're not beautiful, not because they're not smart, not because they're not worth loving, but because nobody ever sat them down and told them how men actually think. You've been told how to feel, how to hope, how to wish, how to try your best. But nobody explained the silent rules men used to judge a woman's value. When you start giving commitment benefits without having commitment, you don't realize how deeply it affects the way a man sees you. In the beginning, it feels natural to give, to care, to show love because your heart moves before your mind has a chance to protect you. You start cooking for him, listening to him, comforting him, supporting him, giving him your time, your energy, your softness. You start bending your schedule, adjusting your life, and giving him access to parts of you he hasn't earned yet. And at first, he might appreciate it, he might enjoy it, he might even brag about you, but inside, he's also making mental notes about how much he had to do to get all this from you. When a man gets everything without effort, he doesn't attach value to it. He doesn't feel responsible for it. He doesn't feel the need to protect it. It becomes something he can enjoy without guarding, something he can consume without investing, something he can claim without earning. And slowly, without you knowing, he starts to think he holds the upper hand. He starts to believe you're already his without him having to declare anything. That belief makes him stop trying, stop showing up, stop planning, because in his mind, you've already shown him you'll show up for him. No matter what, you give him loyalty before he even defines the relationship. You give him emotional support before he gives you clarity. You give him physical intimacy before he gives you intention. And he takes it, because that's what men do when something is freely available. He doesn't stop to ask whether he should have earned it first. He doesn't ask whether he deserves it. He simply enjoys it. And the more he enjoys it without effort, the less he feels the need to rise to the level of the woman. Giving it your heart tell you that giving more will make him see your worth. But in a man's mind, give too much too soon tells him he doesn't need to work for anything real. He doesn't need to step up. He doesn't need to grow. He doesn't need to invest. Because you've already shown him you can be his without requiring anything from him in return. And the moment a man realizes he can have your loyalty without commitment, he stops thinking about commitment altogether. What hurts the most is that you give from a place of purity, and he receives from a place of convenience. You offer consistency, and he offers moments. You build him up, and he barely holds himself accountable. You pour love into him like a future partner, and he holds you like a temporary option. You think your giving will inspire him to choose you, but a man doesn't choose based on what he receives. He chooses based on what he's afraid to lose. And when he knows he won't lose you, because you're already showing up with the effort of a committed woman, while he gives the energy of a man who hasn't committed at all, he settles into that imbalance. It becomes the normal dynamic between you. You love with both hands. He holds you with one. You plan with a full heart. He stays in the moment. You think about the future. He thinks about what you're giving him right now. And slowly your gift becomes the very reason he stops valuing you the way he should, not because you're not worthy, but because you gave the prize before he even ran the race. When you start overgiving and make yourself too available, you don't notice how it slowly chips away at the way a man sees you. At first, you're just being kind. You're being thoughtful. You're being the version of yourself that loves deeply and shows up fully. You respond quickly. You make time even when you're tired. You say yes, even when it costs you something. You cancel your plans. You rearrange your schedule. You make space for him in ways he hasn't earned and hasn't even asked for. You do it because your heart is full. Not because you're trying to buy love, but somewhere inside, a part of you hopes your availability proves your sincerity. What you don't see is how a man starts studying that. He starts noticing how easily you give your time, how quickly you show up, how predictably you say yes. And without saying it out loud, he starts to assume you'll always be there. He starts to believe he doesn't need to try as hard because you've already shown him you're willing to carry the weight of effort on your own. The more you offer, the less he feels the need to offer anything back. And it's not because he's cruel. It's because men are wired to value what they have to work for. When something requires effort, he protects it. When something takes time to earn, he treasures it. But when everything is handed to him without him lifting a finger, he enjoys it, but he doesn't respect it. He doesn't rise to meet it. He doesn't work to keep it. He just settles into the comfort of knowing you'll be there regardless of how much or how little he shows up. You think you're being supportive, but he starts reading it as you needing him more than he needs to show up. You think you're showing love, but he starts thinking he doesn't need to earn it. You think you're being loyal, but he starts believing he doesn't need to give the same in return. And slowly, without you realizing it, your availability becomes the reason he stops appreciating you. You message him first. You call him more. You plan everything. You accommodate everything. And you tell yourself you're just being thoughtful. But to him, it becomes routine. It becomes something he expects. It becomes predictable. And when a man starts expecting you more than appreciating you, the dynamic shifts. He stops chasing. He stops putting in effort. He stops doing the little things because he assumes you'll cover the rest. And the painful part is that you're not doing any of this out of desperation. You're doing it from a genuine place. You want connection. You want closeness. You want him to feel cared for. But every time you show up without letting him show up equally, you unconsciously teach him that his effort is optional and yours is guaranteed. You begin to shrink parts of your own life so he can take up more space. You stop being busy. You stop being unavailable. You stop having boundaries, not intentionally, but because you're afraid that distance will make him lose interest. But what you don't realize is that distance is the very thing that makes a man lean in, while over availability makes him lean back. He should miss you sometimes. He should wonder what you're doing. He should notice when you're not always reachable, not because you're playing games, but because you actually have a life that doesn't revolve around him. A woman with her own world is magnetic to a man. A woman who abandons her world to orbit around him makes him lose the drive to pursue her, and little by little, your overgiving becomes the reason he stops giving. Your constant presence becomes the reason he stops showing up, and your availability becomes the quiet thief of the value he once saw in you, not because you are unworthy, but because you forgot to protect your own energy while pouring all of it into him. When you start respecting yourself loudly enough that a man can hear it in your actions, everything about the way he treats you changes. But the opposite is also true. The moment you silence your self-respect, even a little, a man starts to shift the way he sees you. You don't always notice it at first. It starts quietly in the small places where you let something slide because you care too much to argue. You ignore a comment that bothered you. You forgive something that didn't sit right with your spirit. You pretend a red flag is yellow because you hope he'll eventually get it right. And every time you swallow that feeling, a small piece of your own value breaks off. Inside you, a man watches the way you treat yourself more than the way you treat him. If you let disrespect slide, he assumes it's allowed. If you accept inconsistency, he assumes you don't deserve consistency. If you make excuses for him, he assumes he doesn't need to make changes. You don't have to say anything. Your silence teaches him. Your tolerance teaches him. Your lack of boundaries teaches him. And before you know it, you've trained him to believe you'll stay no matter what you think you're being understanding. You think you're being patient. You think you're giving the relationship space to grow. But inside his mind, it translates differently. It tells him you don't believe you can do better. It tells him you fear losing him more than you fear losing yourself. It tells him you're willing to bend your standards just to keep the peace. And that shifts the dynamic completely. Because a man only truly respects a woman who respects herself loudly, clearly, unapologetically. Respect isn't something you demand out loud. It's something you enforce through the choices you make, the way you walk away from what hurts you, the way you don't allow love to come at the cost of your dignity, the way you don't let loneliness make decisions for your heart, the way you tell someone no without trembling, the way you protect your spirit even when your heart is attached. That's the kind of respect a man feels, even when you don't say a word. But when you start betraying yourself just to hold on to him, he feels that too. He feels when your standards lower. He feels when you become afraid to upset him. He feels when you start prioritizing his comfort over your own peace. And the moment he senses that you're willing to disrespect yourself in order to keep him, he stops valuing you the way a man should value a woman. Not because he's heartless, but because you've shown him that you'll accept the bare minimum. And people rarely give more than what they can get away with. A woman who respects herself creates a presence that makes a man step up. He chooses his words more carefully. He shows up with better intentions. He gives effort because he knows she won't settle for anything less. She doesn't threaten him. She doesn't yell. She doesn't beg. She simply has a standard so clear that he can either rise to meet it or walk away. And a man who truly wants her will rise without her having to remind him. But when you quiet your self-respect in the hope of keeping him, something inside you begins to dim. You start feeling smaller. You start feeling unheard. You start feeling like you're giving more of yourself than you can afford, and that feeling grows heavier every time you let something slide just to avoid conflict or disappointment. You lose yourself piece by piece, and he loses respect for you piece by piece. Self-respect is the foundation of how a man determines your value. It's the way you carry yourself, the way you protect your boundaries, the way you walk away when something doesn't align with your worth. And when that self-respect fades, even slightly, it doesn't just kill the value he sees in you. It kills the value you see in yourself, which hurts even more because you know deep down you deserve better from him. But even more importantly, from yourself. When a man feels like he didn't have to earn you, something changes inside him, even if you never notice it at first. It starts subtly, in the space where effort should be. A man who earns a woman cherishes her differently. He thinks differently. He behaves differently, because the process of earning her shapes the way he values her. But when everything comes too easily, when there are no standards, no requirements, no expectations, he doesn't feel that same sense of responsibility. He enjoys you, but he doesn't protect you. He likes you, but he doesn't prioritize you. He takes from you, but he doesn't build with you. A man is wired to pursue, not just romantically, but biologically. The effort he puts into you isn't just about winning you. It's about proving to himself that you were worth the climb. When there's no climb, no pursuit, no challenge, he settles into a comfort that kills his motivation. He stops trying because he feels like there's nothing left to work for. A woman who just hands over her heart without requiring anything first becomes someone he assumes will always be there no matter how he shows up. You think giving freely shows your sincerity, but to him, it signals that he didn't have to grow to deserve you. He didn't have to adjust. He didn't have to reflect on his behavior. He didn't have to stretch himself. And when a man doesn't have to stretch, he stays exactly where he is. He takes you as you are, but he doesn't become better in response. The connection becomes one-sided because only one person is growing while the other one is getting comfortable. And the hardest part is that you give him love, hoping it will inspire him. You give him consistency, hoping he'll mirror it. You give him openness, hoping he'll step up. You give him everything, hoping he'll wake up one day and finally see your worth. But men don't value what they wake up to. They value what they work through. They value what challenged them, what pushed them, what required something. And if you allow him to skip the part where he has to show effort, he skips the part where he has to mature into a man who's ready for you. When a man earns a woman, he's more careful with his words. He thinks before he acts. He pays attention. He listens. He remembers small things. He shows up consistently because he knows he had to prove himself to even stand beside her. But when he doesn't feel like he had to prove anything, he becomes careless. He responds when he feels like it. He does the bare minimum. He puts in effort only when it's convenient. He doesn't fear losing you because he didn't work to gain you. It's not about playing games. It's not about withholding love. It's about understanding that a man needs the process of effort to attach value. A man needs to feel like he stepped up to deserve your time, your presence, your heart. If you remove that process, you also remove the structure that makes him take you seriously. You end up loving deeply while he loves lazily. You commit fully while he commits halfway. You pour in everything while he only gives what doesn't inconvenience him. And inside, you start feeling the imbalance. You start feeling unappreciated. You start feeling like his comfort is being built on your sacrifice. You start feeling like you're holding the relationship up while he sits back and enjoys the view. But he doesn't see it because he was never required to earn a place beside you. He didn't go through the effort that creates appreciation. He didn't learn what it costs to have you, so he doesn't understand the value of keeping you. A man values what he earns because the journey shapes him. The effort shapes him. The challenge shapes him. And when you skip that step for him, he sees you as something he found, not something he fought for, and that difference becomes the quiet reason he stops showing up as the man you hoped he would be when you don't have boundaries. A man feels it long before you realize what's happening. He feels it the moment you say yes, when your heart whispered no. He feels it the moment you let something slide that should have been a conversation. He feels it the moment you choose peace over your own needs, hoping he'll appreciate your sacrifice. But instead of appreciating it, he starts getting comfortable with it. What you call understanding, he starts calling normal. What you call patience, he starts calling permission. And slowly the line between love and self-abandonment begins to blur inside you. A man learns your boundaries not by what you say, but by what you tolerate. If you allow disrespect, he learns that disrespect doesn't cost him anything. If you allow inconsistency, he learns that effort is optional with you. If you allow emotional neglect, he learns that your heart is soft enough to handle disappointment without consequence. And the more you accept, the more he assumes you always will. He doesn't have to think deeply about his actions. He doesn't have to adjust anything. He doesn't have to show improvement because your silence makes it easy for him to believe you're fine with everything as long as he doesn't push too far. Boundaries are not walls. They're not anger. They're not punishment. They're a reflection of how much you value yourself. When you say no to something that hurts you, you're not rejecting him. You're protecting yourself. When you walk away from what feels wrong, you're not giving up. You're choosing self-respect. But when you keep accepting behaviors that drain you, he stops seeing you as someone he needs to protect. He starts seeing you as someone who will protect him from consequences. Instead, you try to be the bigger person. You convince yourself that love means flexibility. You tell yourself that he's just going through things, that he'll change on his own, that you shouldn't push too hard. But while you're busy protecting his comfort, you're sacrificing your own emotional safety. And he gets used to that. He gets used to you swallowing your pain, hiding your disappointment, pretending you're okay when you're breaking inside. And the worst part is that the more you minimize your hurt, the more he minimizes his responsibility. A man respects a woman whose boundaries force him to grow. He respects a woman who doesn't let him get away with laziness. He respects a woman who addresses things directly, not with attitude, but with clarity. He respects a woman who can love him deeply without losing herself in the process. Because boundaries make him aware of his behavior. They make him think. They make him choose to step up instead of sliding into convenience. But when a man doesn't see boundaries, he starts taking the easy road. He gives excuses instead of effort. He gives moments instead of consistency. He gives crumbs instead of time. And because you don't push back, he assumes you're satisfied with the bare minimum. Your softness becomes something he relies on instead of something he cherishes. Your forgiveness becomes something he expects instead of something he earns. And little by little, you stop feeling like yourself. You start feeling invisible. You start feeling unheard, unseen, unappreciated. You start feeling like your love costs you more than it gives. That's what a lack of boundaries does. It slowly breaks you down while building him up in all the wrong ways. Not because he's trying to hurt you, but because you've given him no reason to believe his behavior needs to. Change a man doesn't respect a boundary you never set, and he doesn't honor a standard you never enforce. And when those things are missing, the value he should see in you becomes something he takes for granted instead of something he worked every day to prod. When you start losing yourself in a man, even in the smallest ways, something inside the relationship shifts. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, quietly, in the tiny sacrifices you make that no one sees. You stop speaking up when something bothers you. You stop doing the things that used to make you feel alive. You stop investing in your passions, your friendships, your dreams. Your world gets smaller while his becomes the center of everything. And at first, you tell yourself it's just love, it's just effort, it's just you being loyal. But deep down, something in your spirit starts to feel dimmer, like you're shrinking pieces of yourself just to fit into his life. A man notices when a woman loses herself. He notices when you stop having opinions. He notices when you stop having boundaries. He notices when you stop being the woman who once attracted him. He notices when your fire becomes a flicker. But instead of stepping in and reminding you of your worth, he often adjusts to the watered-down version of you. Not because he's trying to hurt you, but because he gets used to the comfort of you always being available, always being accommodating, always putting his needs above your own. You start changing your personality to keep the peace. You stop expressing your truth because you don't want to argue. You stop showing your strength because you fear it. It will push him away. You stop being your raw, authentic self because you think being agreeable will make him stay. But the painful reality is that the version of you he stays for is not the version of you he fell for. Men are drawn to women who stand firm in who they are, women who have a voice, women who have a life, women who know their worth without needing validation. When you trade that woman for someone who is afraid of losing him, he stops seeing you with the same admiration. Losing yourself doesn't look dramatic. It looks like saying yes when you don't want to. It looks like staying quiet when your heart is screaming. It looks like giving up things that once made you feel alive. It looks like apologizing for having needs. It looks like abandoning your own growth because you're too busy holding him up. And eventually, the relationship becomes unbalanced. He becomes the priority. And you become an accessory to his life instead of the author. Of your own, a man doesn't value a woman who gives up her identity for him. Not because he's ungrateful, but because he subconsciously feels that if you don't value yourself, he doesn't have to. If you don't prioritize your life, he doesn't feel pressure to prioritize you. If you don't honor your own dreams, he won't feel obligated to support them. A woman who loses herself doesn't inspire effort. In a man, she inspires complacency. He doesn't rise, he relaxes. He doesn't invest, he indulges. He doesn't chase, he coasts, and deep inside, you start feeling the emptiness. You start feeling like you don't even recognize yourself anymore. You start feeling like loving him made you forget how to love you. You feel resentment quietly building, but you don't know how to express it because you've been silent for so long. You feel tired in a way that sleep can't fix. You feel unseen, not because he isn't looking, but because you stopped showing who you really are. The truth is, a man values a woman who values herself first. A woman with her own life, her own glow, her own identity. A woman who loves him deeply without sacrificing the parts of herself that make her powerful. A woman who can stand beside him, not behind him. When you lose yourself, you don't just lose your identity, you lose the very energy that makes a man see you as someone irreplaceable. And the hardest part is realizing that loving someone should not require disappearing. You were not made to shrink to fit into a man's world. You were made to stand in your fullness. You were made to bring your whole self into a relationship. Because when you show up as the woman you truly are, that's when a man sees the real value in you, not as someone who needs him to feel complete, but as someone complete enough to choose him without losing herself in the process.